Hey, welcome to my video. I'd like to just take a few minutes to give my opinion on the just aired final episode of AMC's The Walking Dead, from the perspective of a fan that's been watching for roughly a decade at this point, since season 3 started airing on television. This is going to be a quick little review / rant so I can vent out my thoughts and frustrations to someone because my girlfriend doesn't want to hear this shit anymore. Just to be clear though, this isn't just a rant. This final wasn't that bad. It wasn't my favorite season finale, but it was okay. It was alright. But that's the thing, this wasn't a season finale. It was a series finale, which should be held to a higher esteem than the others. And I don't feel the level of satisfaction I was hoping for with the finale, but definitely in the ballpark of quality I was expecting when going into it. But I understand, it's hard to get the show to feel that way when you're missing a majority of important characters, including the main character himself. But I'd like to talk about the stuff I enjoyed before all the gripes I got about it. But before I continue, I'd like to just put out there a spoiler warning. Not just for this episode, but pretty much the majority of the show and some of the comic book as well. So just to let you guys know, you were warned. First off, it was an alright conclusion to the Commonwealth arc, with Mercer finally putting the cuffs on that bitch Pamela Milton, which was pretty satisfying, and the whole thing with Maggie coming full circle to seeing why Rick kept Negan alive to go to prison, and then her doing that same thing to Pamela instead of killing her, that was some good shit. I also like whenever the people of the Commonwealth were locked behind that gate, about to get eaten by zombies, and then Gabriel was the one to step up to let everyone in, saving them, making a complete arc with his character, seeing as how when we were first introduced to him, he was a coward that left a bunch of people outside of a church to get eaten, while he stayed and cried like a little bitch. Full circle, man. I like it when my shows have that. I also enjoyed the final conversations Negan and Maggie had, how Negan had finally broke down and apologized for what he did, and I think this would be a great place for them to part ways. It would be silly to make a whole sideshow about them working together to do something, because no matter what you do, I don't think that's going to feel too natural. Especially how Maggie was just talking about how she can kind of forgive him, but not completely, because every time she looks at Negan, she always just sees the parts of Glenn's brain all over his fucking bat. Yeah, I don't think it worked out too well for him. I probably would have enjoyed this whole arc more if they just never announced the spinoff. I honestly think it would have been good for the narrative to have Negan die a few episodes before in the prison camp. You know, when he was on his knees like he had made so many other people do before him, and die like a martyr similar to his introduction but reversed. And having him die for Ezekiel and the others he pretty much enslaved would be just fucking perfect. But my biggest gripe with everything in the finale probably stems from just the spin-offs being a thing. Why so many? The whole point people like the earlier seasons for of the show in the first place is because all the fun characters that are fun to watch were all together, you know, interacting with one another. Why would you split them all up? Like, don't get me wrong, man, I like Daryl. You know, he's alright, but I'm probably not going to watch a show just about that guy, though. Same thing with Maggie and Negan. I mean, I really like Negan, but it's so obvious they're just trying to milk that man and all these other marketable characters into the ground. I would have been happier for Negan to die in those last few episodes and have the main show end with Maggie becoming the new governor or something. Kind of like the comics where she became the fucking president of the world. I mean, they were setting up that arc back in seasons 7 and 8, you know, whenever she was the leader of Hilltop. But that kind of just went nowhere because she just ended up dipping and then coming back later on. And if you are going to make a Daryl spinoff, I would have personally just made him a part of the Rick and Michonne show. I think it would have worked better to have Michonne and Daryl together, you know, looking for Rick. And shit, might as well bring Judith too instead of just passing her along onto some other new person every season. And RJ should have never even made him. It might be a hot take, but not a great character. He doesn't do anything. He barely has any screen time. People barely even mention him. It's like, why can't you just have Judith? I mean, that should be, like, if you have Judith and RJ around, and the whole reason to have RJ is to make, like, Rick have a motivation to come back, or Michonne, like, I think Judith should be enough motivation. I don't think Rick even knows he has a kid, and by the time he gets back, I mean, Rick's been gone for almost a fucking decade. I doubt RJ's even gonna give a shit about him. Like, what's the writing purpose behind him? You know, if there was some reason to have RJ writing-wise, what was it? So that Michonne could raise Rick's kid? Well, I mean, she didn't raise him, because she just dipped on him. You know, I used to really like Michonne as a character, to be honest, but what kind of mother just immediately gets up and leaves her 2 children, one of them being an infant, and just leaving them, you know, not only in the zombie apocalypse, but in the climax of the Whisper War, just because she smelt some funky boots that smelled like her husband that's been dead for 6 years. She literally just left her kids with Daryl, who's gone most of the time anyway, and I guess Carol too, but she doesn't have a good track record with kids, you know. I'd be kind of pissed if I was Rick, you know. And also fucking Negan's out of jail, so I don't think Rick's gonna be too happy knowing that Michonne left both his new children to be raised by Negan. Not a good sign. Yeah, I know. I've been on a tangent about that, but all this spin-off shit heavily depletes the impact of the show's finale. When all the good characters are gone, or have spin-offs coming up, first of all, there's no tension for them because they can't die. You know, Daryl's not dying, Maggie, Negan, they're not dying. So, who do you kill off from the finale? Hopefully some impactful deaths, right? Well, 3 characters die from what I remember in this finale. Luke, who he's pretty much been gone for like a season and a half doing something in Oceanside. He just kind of left and came back in these last couple episodes just to get immediately fucking ate. He got bit on his leg, they cut it off, and I guess it didn't work, and he just died from blood loss. And he died with his girlfriend, Jules, who had probably 2 minutes of dialogue throughout her entire run on the show. Yeah, those 2, and then the big death was, I would have never guessed that this would be the big death of the finale, but it was Rosita. Definitely never would have thought about that. I mean, I never really hated her, except for when she was really bitchy in her earlier seasons, up to like season 9. And she also did some stupid shit back in like season 7, I think, when she tried to assassinate Negan like 10 feet away and she still missed. Yeah, that was pretty stupid. But her death just wasn't impactful to me. The saddest part was honestly just Eugene's reaction to finding out about it. But I think it was drawn out way more than it should have been. And I think if Rick had never left, this was probably a death meant for him. Kind of going along with the comic book death of him. Imagine how much more impactful that final death would have been if instead of Rosita dying and then Eugene having to put her down, it was Rick dying in the end, and Carl was still around to put him down. Now that would have been some crazy stuff to watch. It would have been a tearjerker, definitely. But they can't do Rick, you know. They can't kill him now. So I think the better option that's still on the show instead of Rosita would have been Carol, to be honest. I mean, think about it. She was supposed to be on the Daryl spinoff, but the actress didn't want to do this stuff anymore, so they had her stay in the Commonwealth when Daryl ended up leaving. But what if she just ended up sacrificing herself for Judith or something, you know? Like, whenever Judith got shot, maybe she had to guard Judith and ends up feeding herself to zombies much like her comic book counterpart, but maybe just getting a bit a few times so they still have a sad scene with her on her deathbed or something. And it would be a lot more emotional and impactful than how Rosita went out. And I think for the long run, it probably would have helped the whole finale out to really make it feel like a conclusion to the story. Because, I mean, Carol was there since season 1. You know, have her die in the final episode all the way up, you know. Now that feels like a real conclusion to something. And speaking of Carol's comic book death, I noticed they were about to do that with Pamela, which in all honesty was kind of stupid. First of all, nobody's gonna stop her from just walking straight up to the gate to the zombies. The person that needs to be put on trial, and nobody's gonna stop her from slowly trying to kill herself up in front with the zombies. The former president of this whole city, pretty much, or governor or whatever, there's guards everywhere, and everyone's just sitting there watching for a good couple minutes as this chick literally just walks up, stares at a zombie, and debates for those few minutes whether to move like a couple inches to let that zombie bite her. Nobody stops her. The only person to do anything about it is Maggie, who's a sniper like a few rooftops away. If Maggie didn't shoot that zombie, everyone would just sat there and watched as they ripped into that lady. Yeah, kind of stupid. I mean, I like seeing zombie lands. That was a good touch, but everything else about it, I don't really like too much. And also, the whole final battle doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know if I'm just missing something or I didn't pay enough attention. Did Pamela order those guards to bring the Horde to the Commonwealth? Because she genuinely acts surprised to the news of the Horde, and her immediate plan is to sacrifice all the lower houses to the Horde. How is that at all supposed to help her or her image, her political career, anything? Just sacrifice a bunch of people for no reason because she's the one that brought the zombies? I don't know whose orders was it to bring the zombies there, but I feel like the whole thing was overlooked in a way, unless I'm missing something. Anyway, the first half of the episode was pretty much just wrapping up all the Commonwealth stuff, and the second half is the kind of epilogue, having another year time skip, which I just think is a little ridiculous considering the fact that Rick and Michonne are still gone for another year. Man, yeah, they've been gone for a while, especially my boy Rick. But the second part's okay. It's pretty much Daryl going around saying his goodbyes as he gets to go off onto his own show, and pretty much shows the happy endings for all the rest of the characters. And then we finally get it. What everyone's been waiting for, especially what I've been fucking waiting for. Rick Grimes. I'm not gonna lie. When I heard him start talking for the first time, it was actually him. I got a hard on. Yep, it happens, man. That's what my boy Rick does to me. I was hoping we were going to get a little bit more of him, but I wasn't expecting anything, honestly. But there's no way you can end this show without him making some kind of appearance. In our world, the real world, this man has been off screen for 4 years, with nothing to go off of to show where he is other than a constant announcement he'll get his own movie and possibly a trilogy. But after years of pretty much just straight up lying, Scott Gimple announced they were going to give him a 6-episode TV show instead, which I'll take it, I guess. I mean, I'll get whatever Rick content you give me. I'm not going to watch the other spin-offs, though. I watched like up to season 3 of Fear the Walking Dead, and I didn't really like it too much, and I watched like the first episode and some clips from World Beyond, and it kind of sucked to me. So their spin-offs aren't really winning me over, but if Rick is in it, I'm watching it. And I think that's what the runners of the show know too. If Rick is involved, that's why everyone was watching World Beyond, was just for hints of this guy. But yeah, nonetheless, Rick is my favorite character and the main reason why I even watched the show to begin with, and for as long as I did. And the mystery of him still being out there is pretty much the only reason why I kept watching. Honestly, if he died right there and there's no helicopter scene, I don't know if I would have kept watching. Probably for a little bit just to see how it turned out, but man, by the time you got to season 10 and like most of season 11, it's some of it gets hard to watch, especially when you have Rick to back you up. Anyway, seeing him one final time for the main show was awesome, and what little we got from him was pretty fucking good. It reminded me of the stuff that this show has been missing for so long. You need Rick. Rick is like the soul of this show. But the shitty thing about him showing up like that was it felt like the show wasn't even ending. It was just setting up the real story. The whole second half of the episode kind of just felt like setup for the spin-offs. And just, writing off the rest of the characters that they don't want to make spin-offs for, But it's kind of ridiculous to think that after everything, you have a 1-year time skip. I mean, Rick has been gone for, I get almost 10 years at this point, because first it was that 6-year time skip, and then 2 years with some time skips between like the New Beginning, the Whisper War, and all that stuff, and coming up into the Commonwealth, had a few time skips. And then another year time skip at the end. He's definitely been gone for a decade. And Michonne's been gone for at least like 2 or 3 years. I don't know how people can put up with the idea that Michonne's still out there alive. Like no contact for 2 or 3 years. And Judith just accepts that her mom's out there. I remember her talking to Daryl. And then Daryl reminding her like, Michonne is brave and she'll be back. But Daryl, how the fuck do you know? You haven't seen her for 2 or 3 years. Usually if someone's gone that long, they're pretty much dead, unless you're Rick, but everyone still thinks he's dead. But yeah, this is pretty much just a rant I wanted to get out there from a fan of a long time, all the way up to the end. So I hope you guys found this enjoyable. and I will talk to you later with another review soon, hopefully. I hope you have a nasty night. Goodbye.